Welcome to our weekly news magazine program, Bhutan This Week. I'm Sharab Zangmo. Our top stories for the week. His Majesty King graces the opening ceremony of the Parliament on Wednesday. The groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of the head office of Election Commission of Bhutan was held on Wednesday. His Holiness the Chehempo installed the Sacho Bumter at the powerhouse and dam site of Punatsangshuan hydropower project on Wednesday. His Majesty the King graced the opening ceremony of the second session of the Second Parliament on Wednesday. This session will see Public Accounts Committee report as well as deliberation on the Biosafety Bill of Bhutan 2014. The House will also discuss on the amendment of National Assembly and Local Government Acts.
His Majesty the King was received with a traditional Chibdral ceremony at the Gyalgyong Tsokang. His Majesty was received by the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Prime Minister, the Opposition Leader and the Chairperson of the National Council. Prime Minister Sring Topke thanked His Majesty the King for gracing the opening ceremony of the second session of the Second Parliament. Lenchen also shared that the recent royal state visit by His Majesty the King and the Gyaltsen to India further strengthened the good relations between the two countries. Lenchen highlighted the economic situation of the country and affirmed that the government would work to resolve the situation.
Dizumgi ka tab made yebdalu miwachogi darenaba tab made bomshoji najenlu layo mebigi kangel in sengyuzin zenai layo di kanrakan bemasuru ngachigi lorere tonta khechigi layo gi gokap zogoppe kanai seshuni irura ngacharegi gekapdi chungkuchige lab mebletendigi be tedisu sera sesu se kanai Senigi tundale, Nachit, Jungyope lambe yu, Junglu wanse lambe nine, se kanamagi mase, Tadisu, Tangachi gekapnalu, Lamilanda, Besup masupgi, Loju member, Bem mamegi loju in se kanai. The Benigi tudi, Hura huchi se katekadu nine se shuni.
On behalf of the people, Lenchen also expressed gratitude to the 4th Dru Gyalpo for his enlightened and selfless leadership in securing peace and prosperity in the country. He also made special mention of the armed force and thanked them. Lenchen congratulated the Nanang Shumar constituency MP Dichin Zangmo for her election to the parliament as well. Their Royal Highnesses Prince Jigme Doji Wangchuk and the princesses, senior government officials and international diplomats were present at the opening ceremony. Pemal Harden, BBS News.
The opposition leader and the chairperson of the National Council also made opening remarks at the Gyalgyong Tsokang.
The opposition leader, Dr. Pema Jamso, thanked His Majesty the King for continued peace and prosperity in the country after the successful completion of the second parliamentary elections. Like the Prime Minister, the opposition leader also expressed that the recent royal visit to India further consolidated the good relations between the two countries. Other than this, Dr. Pema Jamso expressed appreciation towards the government for working hard to fulfill their pledges. He added that the opposition would never criticize the government without reason. Dr. Pema Jamso laid emphasis on the importance of the 11th five-year plan towards achieving self-reliance. Revival of the country's economy was underlined as well.
Nachiragi Gehapki Miguel, Damba Rango Rando Sonigi Miguel, Nibalu, Nashi Midi Nangelu, the Ufongi Kangel di Jasha Junile, Jashangatiji, Pabnigi, Lerim Disu, the Mise Konaleve, the Geok Sokdi, Nachiragi Zonga Soktule Zadi, the Dubnanamigi, Chashiji Benedigi, the Lerim Disu, Miseki Tadin Disu, Gehapki Miguel Disu, Dumnigi Genkudi. The
chairperson of the National Council, Dr. Sonam Kenga, talked about the national vision. He shared that His Majesty the King, over the last few months, has articulated the national vision at various forums.
Dandu, Kajida Tidi, La Gachira Bedi Beru, Jutanjulu, Giliongi Dunchi Dupsubnigi, Goadi, Semka Shashina, Chajudochi Boachin, La Chunkuchi Bedi Beru, Jachio Totoda, Kings of Toto, Jonigi Kokabdula. The bulletin, Nachiragi Nacharalu, Duadi, Garagi no Santangobiki, Geliongi, Maung Yuntengi, Miktechida, Charnangchi, Namlongitong Ishule Giadi, Yuga Sivigi, Dua, Kyokabdula.
Dr. Sonam Kenga said His Majesty has given the people a much-needed national vision that will define Bhutan's way forward. For Pemal Harden, Namgizam for BBS News.
Later in the afternoon, the National Council held a separate opening ceremony, which was also attended by the Prime Minister, Home Minister and the National Assembly Speaker. The House will table the National Council and Tobacco Control Acts for amendments. Ratification of the Convention on establishing the Multilateral Investment Agency and Double Tax Avoidance Agreement between Bhutan and India is on the agenda as well. The National Council will also see deliberation on the performance audit report on leasing of government land and government-reserved forest and mines by its Good Governance Committee. His Holiness the Jehempo installed Sachu Bumter at Powerhouse Machine Hall and the dam site of Punat Sanchuan hydropower project on Wednesday. In the evening, as His Holiness headed to Wangdi, hundreds of people lined along the road to receive blessing from His Holiness. His Holiness was earlier in Gelifo presiding over a week-long Milam Chenmo. The Salang Tendril, or the groundbreaking ceremony for the construction of the head office of Election Commission of Bhutan, was held on the 22nd of this month. Her Majesty the Gelson graced the ceremony, which was presided over by His Holiness the Gese Tuku.
Her Majesty the Gelson graced the groundbreaking ceremony. The Election Commission of Bhutan's head office, Democracy House, will be constructed on the 65 decimal land at Kawajangsa. The Chief Project Coordinator said the construction works will begin immediately. The 5-storied building will cost around 128 million niltum. It will be funded by Government of India. The office is expected to be complete by December 2015. ECB also has plans to construct election offices in all the 20 zongkhaks. An exhibition of photographs of electoral activities carried out by the Election Commission of Bhutan was also organized. Sonam Hamu for BBS News.
India has agreed to expedite works to increase the number of trade transit points along the Bhutan-India border. This was one of the major outcomes of the bilateral meeting on trade and transit between the two countries, which was held in Thimphu.
The Indian delegation assured to validate and expedite works on several entry and exit points for trade between Bhutan and India. An alternative route to the industrial state in Pasakha, Finsling from the highway at Bolanchopati near Manglabari to Ale village in Pasakha is one of them. On this, the Indian delegation told the meeting that budget has been allocated, but said the West Bengal government is yet to complete land acquisition works. The Indian official said they are also looking at the Bhutanese government's request on having a second gate established in Finsling that will directly lead to the dry port near the STCBL office. About the road from Bokajuli in Daranga, Assam to Matanga Industrial State in Samrajonkar, the Indian officials said they are currently resolving land acquisition issues.
We had requested for permanent, starting from Funsuling side, the Pasakha one is called Upper Kogla. Then we have one in Nanglam. Nanglam is called, I think, Rangapani. Then we have Motanga, that's called Bokajuli. So these are, and then we have one in Gomtu area, it's called Dalmori. the Indian side, to go into Gomtu, because Gomtu side, anything they want, they have to come right to Phuentsholing as of now. So that is so these four we have asked them to notify. So they have said that depending on the infrastructure available, because they have to set up customs land stations. So accordingly, they will notify.
The day-long Bhutan-India bilateral meeting on trade and transit also saw discussions on the seasonal checkpoints. Of the 7 seasonal checkpoints requested by the Bhutanese government, 3 have already been notified. The discussions revolved around the 4 remaining proposed seasonal checkpoints. The Indian officials said they will look at it as there is a need to put infrastructures in place depending on the seasonal trade. The Indian delegates also agreed to amend the trade agreement whereby Bhutanese importing vehicles will have an option of getting their cars themselves. Currently, the vehicles imported from India are transported in containers. India has also agreed to relax the quantitative restriction on the import of edible oil. They agreed to increase the import quantity to 13,000 metric tons from 2,400 metric tons. India places quantitative restriction on essential commodities whenever there is a shortage in India. The Indian side also pointed out several issues that they want the Bhutanese government to review. Import restrictions on vehicles, furniture and alcohol was one of them, which the Indian officials said has hit the manufacturers in India.
So we have told them that this is actually a temporary measure owing to our balance of payment problems we're having with India, and that in course of time we will be reviewing it and looking at lifting these bans. The government is looking at various ways how we could, but the main problem is that because we're having balance of payment.
The meeting also proposed for an international best practice to facilitate the excise duty refund, which is a success in Nepal. However, nothing has been agreed on these as of now. Pema Suki for BBS News.
The joint sitting of the Parliament discussed the Public Accounts Committee report on 23rd of this month. The Public Accounts Committee had been asked to rework the report during the first session of the Parliament last year.
In the joint sitting of Parliament today, the chairperson of the Public Accounts Committee, Member of Parliament from the National Council in Tongsa, Tharchen, presented the report.
All the irregularities that we have reflected in the first session has been resolved, and we have reported to this session that it has been resolved.
Nice.
These are significant changes.
During the discussion after your presentation was made, it seemed like a lot of members of Parliament were initially confused about the report as well. Your views on that?
There should not be any confusion as far as our report is concerned. If they have spent good time in reviewing the report itself. We have clearly reflected how the Royal Audit Authority has given enough time for the 2 political parties, and how Royal Audit Authority finally came and reflected and decided to reflect in the annual audit report. Yes. And we have also clearly mentioned about how Election Commission of Bhutan has, as per the Election Act, how they have used to resolve, how they have resolved the standing irregularities of 2 political parties.
That's. Now, so there was also discussion. Members of Parliament actually talked about the fact that there was no need to blame political parties, and they also said that there was a need to amend the Election Act of Bhutan. Now, your views on this?
I think it's too early to comment on this, because as you said, it's true that both the political parties, I don't see any reason to pinpoint between themselves. So the only thing is that they have to abide by the financial norms, standard norms, which the Royal Audit Authority might look into.
Yes.
So if the individual political parties or the concerned political parties had taken good initiative, a prompt action with the Royal Audit Authority, submitting their documents on time, then these issues may not have come at present.
The Public Accounts Committee's report can be confusing for the general public as well. That is why tomorrow after the 7, 8 and 9 p.m. news, we will have a detailed discussion on this issue. We will also be leaving our phone lines open so that you can call in and participate in the discussions.
Her Majesty the Queen Mother Sringpem Wangchuk graced the closing ceremony of the YDF Winter Program on 22nd of this month. The month-long program was organized at Najun Perry Youth Development Center in the capital. Her Majesty is the President of the Youth Development Fund.
The winter program aims to encourage youth to spend their winter break being innovative and productive.
Well, the aims and objectives of this winter program for the young people is to keep themselves engaged and learn useful things in life. So that is the main reason for conducting such camp.
Let's take a look at how
participants shared that such activities to help improve their life skills and also make new friends.
YDF has benefited me a lot because if there was no such thing as YDF, I would be right now at home just staying alone, doing nothing. In YDF, you can make many friends and you can join very nice clubs like reading, arts, and many more.
The executive director of the Youth Development Fund said it was a challenge accommodating all the youth who wanted to be part of the program.
I'm very happy to have spent my vacation here at the YDF. I got to interact with new friends and we were able to help each other in various subjects as well.
At the closing, Her Majesty the Queen Mother Sringpem Wangchuk met with the participants and visited stalls where the youth displayed what they had learned during the program.
I wish we had a bigger space and more youth could participate because this time only about 200 youth could take part. I would say resource is a bit of a challenge because this particular winter youth program is funded solely by YDF and to keep up with such program in terms of magnitude will be difficult.
About 200 youth from various schools under the Thimpu Tromde and other Dzongkhaks took part in the program. For Pemaishi, Karmatsring, BVS News.
The government had received a total of over 1.3 billion Nyultram for the reconstruction of Wangdi Phorang Dzong. The reconstruction works began this month. The project is expected to be complete within 5 years, that is by December 2018.
This is the new approved model of Wangdi Phorang Dzong. These designs have been approved by His Majesty the King for further detailing and implementation on the site. A press release from the Home Ministry said the Dzong will be rebuilt to its former glory but with the state-of-art technology in terms of disaster resilience measures and traditional architecture. In July 2012, His Majesty the King granted 200 million Nyultram for reconstruction of the Dzong. Bhutan Broadcasting Service mobilized about 65 million Nyultram and the Ministry of Finance received over 28 million Nyultram. Wangdi Rabde also received contributions amounting to 40 million Nyultram. The Government of India also granted 1 billion Nyultram. After the fire in June 2012, the Ministry of Home and Cultural Affairs undertook a detailed documentation and assessment of the condition of the remaining structure of the Dzong. The findings were submitted to the government and His Majesty the King. Upon the command of His Majesty the King, a 13-member steering committee chaired by the Home Minister has been formed to oversee the reconstruction. In accordance with the command of His Majesty the King and His Majesty the Fourth Drugyalpo, the Home Ministry, in coordination with the Ministry of Agriculture and Forest and Natural Resources Development Corporation Limited, has already earmarked the sites to extract timber and quarry stones for the reconstruction of the Dzong. Meanwhile, the Wangdi Rabde Committee has already procured nangtins worth over 36 million Nyultram.
The declining condition of farm road has left people of Tashgang village in Dokar-Gyeok in Paru worried with the summer approaching. With monsoon rain, people say it becomes difficult for vehicles to ply along the farm road. Locals have even written officials regarding the matter, but said nothing has been done yet.
On a dry winter day, the road doesn't look so bad. Come summer, the locals say it becomes a nightmare. Improvement and expansion works were carried out on the 4-kilometer farm road as part of a development project by the Ministry of Agriculture and Forest. Works were completed at a cost of over 5 million Niltrum and handed over to the people in December 2012. But after a few months, locals said the condition of the road began to deteriorate.
The condition of the farm road has become worse than before, probably because the improvement works were not done properly. We use the road to transport apples and other produce, but in summer it becomes very hard for the vehicles to get through. We have also written to the ministry twice about the problem.
Kangil de langache namja sabji and bachure lamanda jogola de chab achi chapchira de gar mathe ani ngachinam so gar phu de ani coach mela.
Meanwhile, the officials from the Ministry of Agriculture and Forest said the contractor has been told to redo some of the works which were not up to the standards and complete it within 1 year defect liability period. But after that, officials are not able to get in touch with the contractor. The contractor was not available for the comments. Compiled for Yishigelson in Paro, Pemalhaden, BBS News.
The Election Commission of Bhutan will be revisiting postal ballot-related issues, the role of party workers and volunteers in the political process, among others. The ECB came up with more than 20 issues and recommendations after their learnings from Experience program. The program was held across the country after the second parliamentary elections.
The ECB has come up with plan of actions for implementation to address the issue and recommendations that were discussed during the Learning from Experience programs. During the program, many said there is a need to reduce the number of political party workers and supporters. They pointed out that as there are no clear roles and responsibilities, and they are the one who causes communal disharmony. ECB says they will be reviewing the need and their roles of the party workers in political process. ECB will also review the postal ballot-related issues to rule out any controversy. Learning from Experience program saw issues of postal ballots being not secretive. It was pointed out that alternative voting arrangements should be made, like allowing voters to vote from places they live. At the 8th anniversary of the Election Commission of Bhutan, the Chief Election Commissioner said the Commission will also be carrying out one-stop civil registry and voter registration.
One-stop civil registry and voter registration in collaboration with the Ministry of Home and Cultural Affairs and the Ministry of Works and Human Settlement and Doha administrations towards facilitating ease of civil registration and rationalize proper representation and effective voter participation in elections. It is high time that the anomaly of Thimphu, with high census population, with less representation in parliament, and some Dzongkhaks with many Gumtongs receiving high representation in elected decision-making bodies due to absentee registered voters to be corrected.
Dashukinza Wongdi said ECB will review the need for door-to-door election campaign when common forums and public debates were more effective. Many pointed out door-to-door election campaigns should not be allowed as it's very difficult for election officials to monitor. Some of the other recommendations that ECB will look into are explore options of early and absentee voting, enhance women participation to run for elected posts and adopt cost-cutting measures in elections, among others. Sonam Lhamo for PBS News.
The wave of demand and supply of housing is caught between expensiveness and preferences. And also the stage of finding a house in Samtsi is now about affordability, especially when the rent in some areas are exorbitant.
Concrete buildings have mushroomed in the last few years in Samtsi. Some buildings even resemble low-rise structures that are found in some Class A thomdes. Another resemblance is the rent. 3-bedroom flat charge a minimum rent of about 7,000 to 8,000 Nultram. Due to exorbitant rent, finding a house has become more difficult, especially to families that come from middle and low income group. Pema Chedron and her husband resides in a 2-room semi-concrete hut with their 2 school-going daughters.
It is difficult to find houses in Samtsi. Even if you get one, you have bigger places whose rents are too high. That is why we are living in this hut. It is difficult even to find huts.
She said the biggest threat she experienced sheltering in such place was burglary. Another person who shares same fate is Bim Kumari. She said life inside a single-room mud house is an everyday struggle with 4 children.
It is expensive to live here. You have to pay about 2,000 to 3,000 Niltram for a small house. Who doesn't want to live in a better house? But the rents are very high. That is why we are struggling and living in this place.
Exorbitant rent in Samtsi have turned away many like Pema and Beam to shelter in a cheaper hut. There are some who even drive to over 5 kilometers away from Samtsi town where houses are relatively cheaper. One of the residents, Bobby Maya, said they are forced to look for cheaper house since there are other expenses to life.
We cannot afford to live in a building. The rents are very expensive, and since we have children and families to feed and send to schools, we prefer to live in small places.
Meanwhile, due to soaring house rent, it has become difficult to find tenants. Some houses are left unoccupied. Compiled for Sonam Phuncho, Sonam Rinchin for BBS News.
This is all we have for this week's edition. Thank you for watching.